Day 2, vlog talking Mavericks all season. Looks like the Mavericks will get, or for sure going to add DeAndre Jordan to the roster this year. Talked about it a little bit yesterday, but basically confirmed yesterday that whether or not they're able to put together a trade with the Los Angeles Clippers, sending either Wes Matthews or now, there's a rumor they're willing to part with Kleber and maybe a second round pick to entice the Clippers to do a trade and make the Mavericks cap space available for other free agents more of a possibility. But I think the Mavericks are probably balking at that. I think they'd much rather give up 2 or 3 second round picks than give up Kleber. I think they're pretty high on him, at least right now, after last season, having really no expectation of him. Maybe something similar to what Salah was expected to do. DeAndre Jordan's going to be on this team next year. I'm pretty confident of that. It looks like they've already had talks with him. There's mutual interest, according to reports. And they can fit him in. They've got the cap space. I don't think there's a ton of teams interested. Obviously, they tried to trade him at right before the trade deadline this last year, and were unsuccessful in doing so. So there's not a whole lot of interest out there, maybe outside of the Mavericks. So I think he ends up on this team, which gives us really the defensive presence we've been missing since Tyson Chandler days. Long term, who knows? I don't think it's a great option 4 or 5 years down the road when you expect to start competing after LeBron and Durant and Steph, even once those guys are, aged, starting to retire. That's what you're looking at in terms of trying to compete is 4 or 5 years from now, right? So you're hoping to keep Doncic around, sign him to a second contract, sign DSJ to a second contract, replace Harrison Barnes in the next couple of years with either a free agent or through the draft. I think adding DeAndre Jordan's good. I don't think it's a negative. I'm not as high on him in terms of, like I was saying, 4 or 5 years down the road. I don't know what they're expecting to find, whether it's in the draft or free agency going into the future. I think that's the biggest problem is that, now look at the top 4 or 5 teams in the NBA the last year. Almost none of them had a true center. Almost all of them were working with an undersized center, what you might call more of a stretch 4, playing at the 5, and then running with 2 guards and 2 wings. So, DJ doesn't really fit that mold, but the Mavericks are a different type of team. They really want to have that, rim runner at the 5, and DeAndre Jordan can do that, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. His numbers started to fall off, and then you talk about the problems of, it comes down to the end of a game and he's in there. Well, free throw shooting is a nightmare for him, so what do you do with him? You take him, put him on the bench, put Maxey, you put Dirk out there. Now, there's some possibilities with this squad of what you could do, but then you give up the defense. You put Dirk out there, defense is going to be a nightmare down the stretch, despite the free throw advantage. And then Maxey, maybe that's what you do at the end of games, is Maxey's a pretty good free throw shooter and much better defensively than Dirk is, but not nearly as good as DeAndre Jordan. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. Let's talk LeBron real quick. We got to get away from the Mavericks. LeBron did not opt into his contract with the Cavs, which I'm not surprised, and I don't think anybody else is surprised right now. Everybody's talking about the Lakers. Obviously, they're trying to get Kawhi. The Celtics seem to still be in that conversation with the Spurs, but I think the Spurs, they're desperate to find a way to keep him. I think part of what kept LaMarcus Aldridge in San Antonio was the idea of playing next to Kawhi, and if they lose Kawhi, I think they potentially lose the interest of LaMarcus Aldridge, and that would be difficult to deal with going forward. I think LeBron's gonna go. I said before that I thought he would stay in Cleveland, but man, he's definitely not going to the Rockets. Rockets would have had to do a trade. They can't do a sign and trade because of cap space. He's gonna go. I think the question is, does he go to the Sixers or does he go to the Lakers? I think Lakers seem to have kind of the strongest pull right now, just because they're trying to, tell him we're going to get Kawhi, we're going to get Paul George, because that's his hometown team, and that's how they're trying to convince LeBron to join the fold. It's kind of the Showtime Lakers they're trying to build there. I think it's definitely makes the Western Conference more interesting, but man, I mean, just absolutely destroys the Eastern Conference. You still got some young teams over there that can make a run, and if Toronto keeps their stuff together, Washington, pulls off some decent trades and gets some decent players there, you've got a deep Eastern Conference, but there's not the standouts that are going to be able to compete against a Houston, a Lakers, a rebuilt Lakers, a Golden State Warriors. I mean, even, let's say, top 5, top 6 teams in the West Utah is going to be good again. The only teams really that could compete with Western Conference teams are going to be the Celtics and the Sixers, and I'm not sure the Sixers are quite there yet. Maybe a year or two away. Celtics, I think, could compete, especially with Kyrie back and with Gordon Hayward back, but LeBron on the Lakers with Kawhi, Lonzo, Paul George, it just sounds ridiculous. I can't believe that that's what would happen, but hey, it's the NBA, anything can happen.